Russia invaded Ukraine, maps of the conflict are everywhere. In most cases,
did all the side quests, so it's not much progress was lost. Pepog.
Perhaps. I don't know yet about that.
shaded areas like this red are meant to symbolize territory occupied by Russian forces, or at least territory Russia and Ukraine are fighting over. In general, this red is referring to ground troops like these. The more the Russian ground troops advance, the more of the map turns red. But what maps like these don't show is another battle that's taking place high above Ukraine, where a small Ukrainian air force is fighting a powerful Russian one for control of the skies.
Ground, air, space.
What happens here could determine not just the course of the war, but whether it escalates and spreads beyond Ukraine. It's why Ukraine's allies are scrambling to send it weapons, and some are asking to go a step further.
No-fly zone.
No-fly zone. A no-fly zone.
A humanitarian no-fly zone.
No-fly zone. It seems to make sense.
Well, I think that you all know what I'm going to say. We need the no-fly zone over Ukraine.
So why are the stakes of this air war so high, and what would a no-fly zone change?
Wait. Guys, I don't get it, you guys. I don't get it. No-fly zone for who though? For everybody? For everybody? I didn't understand it.
On February 24th, 2022, the Russian invasion of Ukraine began.
Well, but guys, if you have passengers, guys, and you're going from one place to another with passengers that are just flying to go to, I don't know, Australia, and yet they have to go over the country, what are they gonna do? They're gonna fly over, they're gonna fly in the missiles and shit? What? I don't get it.
And in terms of military strategy, it followed a common script. First, Russian missiles targeted Ukraine's radar system, then its airfields and some missile launchers. To military experts, this appeared to be preparation for a crucial step. Send a lot of planes to destroy the Ukrainian Air Force and achieve what's called air superiority.
So when we say a military has air superiority, what we're essentially saying that is a military more or less controls the skies.
With air superiority, Russia could freely attack Ukrainian ground troops and protect its own ground troops, who could move faster without fear of being attacked from the skies.
If Russia were able to establish virtually unchallenged air superiority, it would be a disaster for Ukraine. Doesn't mean you're guaranteed a victory.
Wait, what? Guys, I don't mean to be weird about it. Guys, I'm just asking this question, guys. Is this a normal thing to mount an AK to a heli?
Superiority, it would be a disaster for Ukraine.
This feels kind of
Doesn't
bad.
mean you're guaranteed a victory, but it makes that victory a heck of a lot more likely.
That's why since World War II, winning air superiority has been the first step in most invasions. But in this case, the biggest...
Because the mag is pretty small, you don't have a lot of ammo, it's very unstable, and I mean, you don't have much accuracy, so I don't know.
Attack never came, and experts don't really agree on why.
My best informed guess is that the Russians thought that they would be welcomed when they got there. And so when they saw men, women, and children blocking their tank from entering the Ukrainian village, that surprised them. And when you make war plans,
it's an RPK,
plans
it makes sense
related
now.
to air superiority, and if your assumptions are wrong, then your plan is messed up.
Whatever happened, it means that more than 2 weeks into the invasion, Russia did not have total air superiority. It allowed the Ukrainian Air Force to defend themselves against some Russian fighter jets and ground forces, helping bog down the Russian invasion. This was celebrated as part of Ukraine's remarkable resistance early on in the war.
It's a function of both Ukrainian success and also some surprising shortcomings in Russian military capability.
But it might not last much longer.
Guys, that was a drone. It's an operated drone by nobody. Nobody's inside of it. It's a drone. It's a drone.
When you compare the Russian military and Ukrainian military, there is no comparison. In every major metric of power, the Russian military is far more powerful, including when it comes to aviation.
Russia has more than 10 times the number of fighter aircraft as Ukraine.
That's
and
it?
So far, they
Only
haven't
10
really
times.
used them.
It's possible over the coming days and weeks that Putin and his military leaders decide to make greater use of Russian aircraft. And I think that's already happening. They're entering a new phase where, in my view, they're systematically using air power in part to systematically attack civilians and civilians.
Okay.
Their invasion and likely cause significant civilian casualties. So Ukraine's allies are frantically trying to keep that from happening. Many countries are sending weapons that Ukrainian ground troops can use to shoot down Russian aircraft. And there have been talks about sending Ukraine planes. But there's also been talk of another kind of help, a no-fly zone. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has asked NATO, the Western military alliance, to declare a no-fly zone. A number of US foreign policy experts have called for a limited no-fly zone, and a recent poll shows that 74% of Americans think the US should declare one. So, what is a no-fly zone? Basically, it's a geographic area where certain planes are prohibited from flying. The point of NATO declaring a no-fly zone over Ukraine would be to prevent Russia from winning air superiority, thereby protecting Ukraine's military and civilians. But what makes a no-fly zone complicated is how NATO would have to enforce it.
Yeah, that's, I'm so
propose the no-fly
confused.
zone in Ukraine, if you're going to be serious about it, you have to consider that to enforce it, to make it a real thing, we would actually have to shoot down Russian aircraft.
This means NATO would be directly participating in the conflict, escalating the war to involve the US and most of Europe.
An establishment of a no-fly zone sooner or later puts us in a high risk of direct combat.
I know what everybody's like, oh guys, as I see how people that are very misinformed, it's like, oh yeah, but then they would win. Guys, if NATO were to get involved, I think, if NATO were to get actually involved, they would win instantaneously. But then it would make Russia mauled. It would measure, and then you have a fucking World War III or some shit, right? Isn't that how it works? Of course, NATO can win. Of course they could, but I think they're trying to be indirectly non-participants that are participating in certain ways. But I think the no-fly zone means that they're very, very directly involved, and then now you have your World War III because then you're gonna maul because that's a very involved way of being involved, motherfucker. Like,
and most of Europe.
An establishment of a no-fly zone sooner or later puts us in a high risk of direct combat. And don't for a minute think that you can control how that escalates. Once one aircraft gets shot down, whether it's ours or theirs, all bets are off on what happens next. Russia is a nuclear armed power. Putin's been making a lot of threats to suggest that he thinks nuclear weapons might be an option.
All of this would also be true of a limited no-fly zone, which would only cover certain areas, but would be enforced in the same way. Putin has vowed to treat anyone imposing a no-fly zone as a participant in the conflict. And so far, President Biden and NATO leaders have ruled it out.
Nobody wins in
So
war.
for now, even while it's...
Question, because this is a question against people that know the answer or not. Okay, if you don't know the answer, don't tell me. Does Russia have enough equipment to consistently launch some of their armament? I understand that having a nuclear weapon is one thing. Being able to launch them at high distances is a complete other thing, right? Do they have enough equipment, or to actually use a lot of it? Oh, they do.
Allies send weapons, Ukraine will have to do the fighting themselves.
Every bone in my body wants to help Ukrainians. They're fighting for all of us, and I weep when I see some of these images.
Guys, because this
reminds
you again. It reminds you a little bit of the Cold War. Why was it so important for somebody to land on the moon? Why was it so important? To display that they have the superiority, and if they want to launch nuclear missiles, they can. How? Because nuclear weapons aren't only launched in the air, they have to be launched in space. That's how they get them down, is that they actually have to go outside of the stratosphere, right? And they have to go into space for them to guys, how do people not know this? How are we in 2022 and people don't fucking know this? Yes, they have to go into space, yes.
All that we can to help Ukraine.
Yes, absolutely.
Also everything we can to avoid direct conflict with Russia.
Of course they do! Dumb fuck! Guys, the early attempts of fucking Russia at Sputnik or whatever.
Hi.
What do you think those are? Do you think that Sputnik is a nice, a cool space shuttle? It's a fucking rocket! It was a rocket made to carry fucking bomb! Are you okay, dude? Dude. I'll find the documentary. Boom. I'll play it again.
Here's what happened. In the
Source?
1960s, we were at war with the Soviet Union, Cold War, and a little bit of hot war over in Southeast Asia. So we fear them because they put up Sputnik, which, by the way, people forget, was an emptied out casing of an intercontinental ballistic missile. And
Russia have more than 1,500 nuclear weapons deployed, meaning they are ready to be used and almost...
Did you guys not listen? Want me to roll back?
We fear them because they put up Sputnik, which, by the way, people forget, was an emptied out casing of an intercontinental ballistic missile. And Sputnik itself means fellow traveler, so it's all peaceful, but it was a ballistic missile head without explosives. So that was a signal, and we freaked in America. So NASA got founded on the fear factor of Sputnik.
It's the casing! Exactly, you fucking moron! Oh my god! Exactly!
All right, so we then go to the moon on the fear factor that Russia will control high ground. Then we go to the moon, space enthusiasts say, oh, we're on the moon by 69, we'll be on Mars in another 10 years. They completely did not understand why we got to the moon in the first place. We were at war. Once we saw that Russia was not ready to land on the moon, we stopped going to the moon. That should not surprise anybody looking back on it. Meanwhile, however, that entire era galvanized the nation. Forget the war driver. It galvanized us all to dream about tomorrow, to think about the homes of tomorrow, cities of tomorrow, the food of tomorrow.
Yes. Don't reproduce. Okay, so everything that I said was actually correct, and everything that I said is literally being taught to you by some scientist, Andy, who knows about this shit. And you're being proven in live that you were wrong and I was right, and you're still molding.
Future world, future land, the World's Fair, all of this was focused on enabling people to make tomorrow come. That was a cultural mindset the space program brought upon us, and we reaped the benefits of economic
You are right.
growth.
I didn't know that. Respect.
You
Thanks, man.
had people wanting to become scientists and engineers who are the people who enable tomorrow to exist today. And even if you're not a scientist or technologist, you will value that activity. And that, in the 21st century, are the foundations of tomorrow's economies. And without it, we might as well just slide back to the cave, because that's where we're headed right now, broke.
I'm tired of saying this, but I'll have to say it again. The NASA budget is 0.4 of 1 penny on a...
This guy just says, but nuclear isn't allowed in a war. Hey, man. Listen, sir. I'm not gonna say anything. You know, dude, you live in that. You go ahead and live in these worlds of
horizontally
rules,
into it.
Okay.
0.4.
When there's no wars, or whatever. Yeah, there's like rules or whatnot. Okay. Whenever war happens, nobody gives a fuck about the rules. Nobody gives a fuck about the. Nobody cares. Okay. People will pretend they'll act certain ways that they care about. They don't. Okay.
1% of its width. It doesn't even get you into the.
When it comes down to it, they do not care.
So I will not accept.
Think back at all the fucking old times. What is it? Mustard gas. What are the fuck? Oh, you can't use this. They use it. Can't do that. They do it. Then nobody gives a fuck.
That says we can't afford it.
Do you realize that the $850 billion bank bailout, that sum of money, is greater than the entire 50-year running budget of NASA? And so when someone says we don't have enough money for this space probe, I'm asking, no, it's not that you don't have enough money. It's that the distribution of money that you're spending is warped in some way, that you are removing the only thing that gives people something to dream about.
This is a little bit too dramatic of a video.
It's the home of tomorrow,
video,
the city of tomorrow, transportation of tomorrow. All that ended in the 1970s. After we stopped going to the moon, it all ended. We stopped dreaming. And so I worry that decisions that Congress makes doesn't factor in the
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, do not care. I do not care. Okay, that was fun.